Hello everyone, my name is Dogly. Last video I summoned for C6 Kazuha, and in this video I'm going to be unlocking those constellations one by one to give a good comparison of what they are doing to my Kazuha's total damage output. I'm going to be using a mixed artifact set here, so I'll have some EM and some attack and crit, but won't be a full build in either direction. That way you can kind of see a little bit of what these stats are doing overall. If I was testing this with just a full EM build, then you really wouldn't be getting a good understanding of what these constellations are doing for his personal damage. So we're going to be fighting Masonry a lot. These first few fights I'm still going to be at C2 just to kind of give a comparison. We're looking for numbers that we can then use to compare in next constellations. So in particular, since his C3 is going to be boosting his skill damage, I want to be looking for what his upward plunge motion does. So that plunge when he's still going up after using his elemental skill, since that's what's going to be increased by his Constellation 3. So we're going to be doing a little bit of setup, trying to get our energy back from Bennett primarily so that we can set that field, go to Kazuha. Let's see, that was a 30k Kazuha slash, which is helpful to know, a 21k upwards plunge. But I feel like not all of my stacks were there because I didn't have that albedo burst that I didn't use. So I'm probably going to have to do this run again to try to get those full buffs to really see what's going on. Of course, Kazuha himself is just so fun to play as, so sometimes it's nice to kind of just, kick back, go into autopilot mode and spam all of his buttons. Alright, let's set that albedo field and try again. Benny burst. Alright, let's watch this in slow motion and see. So that was a 28k plunge upward motion. So that seems like that's probably among some of the highest damage, but we can see that we just activated the Freedom Sworn's buff there. So let's do one more plunge upwards and see what our damage is. 30.5k. So that is our upper limit, it seems like, for his elemental skill damage at C2 with the current artifact build and everything. So once I unlock C2, then we'll be able to see if how much that increases that 30k upwards skill damage. So let's go ahead, let's take a plunge of our own and unlock this constellation. This of course increases his elemental skill by 3 levels. And again, this is only going to impact that first upwards plunge damage. So that's what we're going to be looking at for these next constellations. Alright, so let's see how much that improves. Let's get a high plunge going. So 34k, so increased by about 3.5k so far. Also noticing that our burst damage is doing about 13k for the damage over time, for the anemo damage over time, so just helpful to see that damage as well. But yeah, so not a huge improvement to his overall damage there. Alright, so now it's time to activate Constellation 4. This really isn't a damaging constellation at all. It's a little bit of a weird constellation where it just gives him basically extra energy when he uses his elemental skill, and then extra energy when he's gliding around. I don't think it'll be super practical or super kind of apparent to see it, but let's test it out and just see how it goes overall. I think that was another 30k upwards plunge. But yeah, so gliding around there is really hard. Even though Kazuha can jump upwards and then glide, it feels like he's just not able to stay in the air for any substantial amount of time. And then anytime he's even gliding downwards, it also just sucks up his DPS time anyway. Let's do just another quick test and see how it's coming along. Another 34 upwards plunge. That was a 36 upwards plunge, actually. So, you know, there's a lot of different buffs moving around, and sometimes it's just hard to fully see what's happening all of the time, but you can definitely see that things are starting to go up in terms of his damage. Of course, that was his previous constellation that did that, not this new Constellation 4. But let's just kind of see what it's like to glide around for a little bit and get those extra energy particles. If anything, I think this is much more helpful for overworld things. I don't really think that you're going to be able to take advantage of this constellation in the Abyss. Here I'm kind of jumping off of Albedo's elevator, and that's the only way I'm able to get enough height to even take advantage of this. But here we can see in an actual combat situation, it really isn't that practical, and it's really kind of just sucking up your DPS time. Alright, and now time to unlock Constellation 5. So here I'm expecting to see an increase to his Kazuha slash damage and his damage over time in his ultimate. There's not a ton of exciting things happening with this constellation, so I'm just going to test it super quickly. Build up some energy for Bennett's ult, pop it, and let's take a look. He's guarding, which kind of is annoying, but let's try it out. And 36,000 with a damage over time of 16,600. Yeah. So pretty significant, you know, went from 30k to 36k, went from something like 13,000 to 16,600 for the damage over time. So overall, pretty immediate damage buff there, and I think especially with the damage over time, that's just going to add up a lot. Alright, and now here's the big one, Constellation 6. So I'm really excited to test this one out. I've heard that mixed builds can be pretty good for Constellation 6, so I'll be sticking with the mixed build here for now, just to kind of test things out. But let's jump right into it. There we go. Pop the ult for Benny, and let's we can see that his normal attack damage has improved a little bit, but honestly it's not that big of an improvement. I am noticing that he is able to swirl pretty quickly when he is infused, which I think that might be one of the biggest benefits. So of course in that entire fight, I was much more just trying to see what the normal damage and what that does to his swirling ability was like. We're going to try another fight where we're actually using skills and bursts properly, and then we'll be able to get a better kind of comparison of all of these things together. Pop the Benny ult. 34 upwards plunge. 40k downwards plunge. 50k downwards plunge. So it seems like one of the biggest things that's happening here with C6 is that increase to the downward plunge, which is actually, you know, really nice. So it seems like he has driver potential now. He's swirling a lot. His Animo Infusion will probably let him be a really nice driver, but he's also then able to massively increase his personal damage just because his downward plunge damage has basically doubled. So here we're just going to finish off this fight, only using his normals, not really using support or anything like that. Trying some charge attacks occasionally here and there. His charge attacks definitely seem stronger than his normals. Let's test this in Benny's field. I think his charge attack damage is... it's not like game breaking, it's not, you know, super heavy DPS, but it's definitely there. It's something. Alright, let's go once more. And now we're going to use Albedo's Burst to increase his Elemental Mastery, which will increase his Downwards Plunge, which it just did for 54,000 Downwards Plunge. That definitely like doubled our Downwards Plunge. That's pretty darn nice. 54k on a Downwards Plunge, and you know, Kazuha can use that twice in quick succession, and his cooldown isn't that high. Alright, now let's test this with a team that he's driving elemental reactions with. So with Xiangling and Xingqiu. He's swirling quite a lot. It seems like it's not every hit. I'm guessing his normals have kind of like a standard ICD of 3 or 4 hits. I'll do a better test where I can more clearly see that a little bit later. But I didn't even really get to pop Xiangling's burst there, so let's do this again and see what that looks like when her burst is rotating around as well. Pop the Benny ultimate, Xingqiu, Xiangling, Kazuha. Yeah, there's just so many things happening. He's swirling pretty consistently. Again, not every hit. It looks like maybe every 3 or 4 hits, but that's definitely enough to proc some extra damage, and you know, that's basically like what Sucrose does. Curious to see what his charged attacks do, if they have the same ICD or if it's faster. But yeah, Masonori is kind of like, at this point he just dies so fast that it's really hard to see anything. I mean, I think Kazuha is definitely a really nice driver. So I'm going to switch Kazuha's artifacts now. Now he's rocking closer to a full EM build, so his Goblet is still Anemo, but his Sands is now EM. And we're going to just see how that changes. So his Sands and his Helmet are EM. We're going to see if his damage was higher with EM builds or without. 43k on that downward plunge compared to 54k. So his personal damage definitely is going down, but of course he has potential to buff his teammates more with full EM. I would say they're actually pretty comparable when it comes to the damage output. But yeah, let's really test what that ICD is now. So charge attacks. So it seems like every single time he uses a charge attack that is able to cause 1 swirl, he's doing, of course, 2 hits within his charge attack, but he's getting 1 swirl per those 2 hits. Whereas with his normals, it seems like he's getting a swirl every 3 or 4 hits. So that's just a decent kind of comparison to what his swirling ICD is at C6. But overall, wow. Overall, I'm really happy with my C6 Kazuha, and I think that he is the single best driver in the game. So a driver, of course, is a character that stays on field to activate the abilities of your off-field DPS characters. So Heizou and Sucrose currently are being called some of the best driver characters because of their ability to swirl and cause reactions based off of other characters' abilities. However, Kazuha has even better support capabilities than Sucrose, and his personal damage is even higher than Heizou's. So that's why I have to conclude that Kazuha is simply the best driver that exists in the game. So I do think that Heizou's damage per screenshot numbers can be a little bit higher than Kazuha, but you also have to realize then that Kazuha's elemental skill has a much shorter cooldown, and he divides his damage into a bunch of smaller numbers, but overall C6 Kazuha definitely outdamages both Sucrose and Heizou and outsupports both of them as well. And well, of course you'd kind of expect a C6 character that's a 5-star to be able to outperform 4 stars as well. Also something that hasn't really been talked about much that I've seen after 2.8. I really just have to be in awe of how good of a driver C6 Kazuha is. If you're on the fence about summoning for Kazuha and getting C6 and, you know, really going all in, my recommendation would be, while Kazuha is the best driver in the game, you do have access to other characters that can perform that same role with a much less impact on your Primogem wallet. So if you're somebody who like really likes Kazuha, and you're somebody who has saved up a lot of Primogems, and you were just looking for one good meta reason why C6 is worth it, well, I guess the best driver in the game is one meta reason, I guess. But again, like if it's a cost analysis, I don't think it's probably worth it for most players, just because that role can be met with 4-star cheaper options. However, if you want the best of the best, then I think C6 Kazuha is the single best driver in Genshin Impact. And overall, I'm really happy that I have my Kazuha at C6, that I've been saving my Primogems for a year waiting for his rerun banner. But again, I'm also somebody who really enjoys that character, and that also played a huge impact in my decision. Comment down below and let me know how your guys' summons have been going, or if you have any questions about C6 Kazuha or anything else related to the content of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.